Loud and clear. All right, everybody, we are live. 4 minutes late, which is very unswiss of me. So my apologies, but I had a little bit of a technical glitch. But here we are, and hopefully this is it for the duration. So welcome everybody to the LinkedIn Roundtable. We have added a person this time. In addition to Sophie Lechner and Jason Van Orden, we have my friend Shannon Hernandez join us as well. And in a second, we'll all do our introductions. I just quickly wanted to tell you all what this is about, so we are all on the same page and know what we're listening to and why. And of course, I hope that you will all have plenty of questions for us as we go through this. So our LinkedIn Roundtable series is a series. We explore and discuss ways to grow your audience on LinkedIn. This is specifically for service-based business owners and thought leaders who use LinkedIn to grow their, or use LinkedIn as their primary channel to grow their audience. This specific roundtable is about managing and building successful communities online as well as offline. So we're going to talk a little bit about what works, what doesn't work. We all have different approaches. And as I always love to say, we all agree, although we all have different approaches on LinkedIn and on how to build communities, we all agree that we love our communities and we like to build them organically. And we shy away from any kind of what we call bro marketing tactics. So you all know what that means. So without further ado, I'm going to go around in order as I see my guests and ask them to introduce themselves ever so briefly. Jason, why don't you go first, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Nina. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Jason Van Orden. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a business growth strategist for coaches. Essentially, I help them increase their income capacity by updating their offers and the way they deliver value to their clients so they're not limited by the one-to-one model, and it opens up all this possibility for new income and impact.
Awesome. Shannon, what about you?
Hello, I'm so happy to be joining the Roundtable this month. My name is Shannon Hernandez. I'm the CEO and founder of Joyful Business Revolution, where we help coaches, consultants, and service-based businesses use the power of email marketing to deepen relationships and double their revenue. We are super excited to help you also understand how to move your social media followers and interactors over to your email list. It is your strongest asset in your brand, and we will be talking about that today.
Excellent. Sophie.
Hello, everybody. So LinkedIn coach for mission-driven entrepreneurs. Basically, I love to help mission-driven entrepreneurs to find their audience on LinkedIn and connect with them and build relationships so they can attract their ideal clients instead of having to chase them. I want them to be able to bring the joy of their client work over to the marketing realm. A lot of us just feel icky about marketing, and I want to change that by having you focus on your mission and how you can serve your clients and how that can actually be your marketing.
I feel like I don't need to introduce myself because between the three of us, I feel I do the same thing. So I like to call myself a recovering producer because I'm a 30-year veteran of the film industry. And today I'm a featured LinkedIn content creator and visual storyteller, and I help service-based businesses as well as visual artists on LinkedIn to grow their audience and establish their thought leadership. So without much further ado, the first question is sort of a really obvious question, but also a question that might sort of get lost in the shuffle, which is, what does community actually mean to each of us, and how does it affect our businesses? So Shannon, why don't you go first? Because I know you have a very specific way of looking at your communities.
Yeah, thank you. So in my world, my community is what people would refer to as their email list. And one of the reasons that I love being able to build these relationships on email is because people have said, yes, I want to hear from you. So I feel like I have the permission. We call it permission-based marketing until they don't give us the permission anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, when I talk about email list today, you're actually from this point forward going to hear me refer to it as your email community, because part of, I think, the disconnect with people between their email list and a larger community is they're only seeing their list as a way to like push these one-way kind of communications out. And I'm really here to change that dialogue.
Yeah. Great. And I have a follow-up question, but I first want to get the Sophie's and Jason's take on their communities and how it affects their businesses. Sophie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so it's really similar to Shannon. What I call the community, to me, is more centered on LinkedIn. Although, you know, people have communities on different platforms, but I think that one of the mistakes that people make, similar to what you're saying, Shannon, with the emails, is to use LinkedIn as a platform to just push your message and self-promote, right? Like, I did this, I did that, here's my thing, and signed up for that. And if you start thinking of LinkedIn as a way to have actual relationships with people, the people who choose to follow you and who comment on your content and you know, give you likes and get into conversations, really end up creating a community. And you know, as long as people are interacting only with you, it's not a community, right? But when they start to interact with each other, that's where you have a community. And so I think that LinkedIn really lends itself to that, because I see, and it just gives me so much joy, the people who comment on my posts are actually commenting on each other's comments, and the conversation keeps going, and that really creates a community. In fact, I'll just briefly tell you a story. I do these workshops. I've taken Jason's program, and so I've been doing a lot of workshops, which is one of his strategies. But I won't steal your thunder. So I do these workshops, and I was amazed to see in the chat so many people say, "Hey, I feel like I know you," because you know, they've been commenting back and forth. So they actually are a community already, but it's not a formal one, and that's the main thing that I think is really interesting.
And I think, if I may jump in here, because we take that community and that conversation back and forth from LinkedIn and create actually a LinkedIn-based community with our leg, the LinkedIn engagement group. But the conversation also sort of builds from other communities. Because, like, for instance, in my community, I have a whole bunch of people who are coming on block from another community where I all met them. And once they see the value of what we offer, you know, they tell everybody else, and everybody else is coming. And what it does is, the other community I'm in, it's called the Legacy Collective, run by the fabulous Tiffany Newman, and it's an all women's thing. So sorry, guys. And but what the beauty is that we do some very specific and very long-term work there on our businesses. And then it's really lovely to see how the conversation actually continues on LinkedIn in this other community, and is very supportive. And, like, you know, it's not just like, oh, you know, nice post, thank you for posting, blah blah blah. It's also like, didn't I just hear you say that you also wanted to do this and this, and why don't you try that and that? And it just sort of, it has this beautiful growth effect that goes beyond just you know, doing this tit for tat with posting and commenting on each other's posts. Anyway, Jason, what about you?
Yeah, so there's this great article on Harvard Business Review called The 30 Elements of Value. And in it is this diagram of a triangle or a pyramid, kind of like this. And it's loosely based on like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's like 30 different types of ways that businesses, entrepreneurs can create value for the people that they serve. And right up there towards the top with things like self-actualization and legacy is belonging and affiliation.
Yeah.
And so really, I think it comes down to that through these various channels we're talking about, through the messaging that we use, the language that we share and create with them, the values that we have in common. We offer that way for them to feel a sense of belonging, you know, in relation to us and our message, and that they're part of whatever we're putting out there, but more importantly with each other and others that are, you know, within our orbit and maybe following what we're putting out there as well. So it comes down to that belonging and affiliation, I think.
Yeah. And I think that also is, you know, I think in our cases where we're creating our own communities is sort of taking the matters in our own hands and creating the communities that we would like to be in, and are maybe not necessarily seeing being creative, right? I know for me, for sure, I drown out in communities that are too big. It's just not for me. And I had to learn that by being in a couple of really big communities where I saw the value. It wasn't that they weren't well run or they weren't great communities. They just weren't for me. But a community with 30 to 50 people, or maybe even 100, is something that where I can thrive and feel comfortable and know I'm getting value or giving value, right? So I think this sense of belonging is also something that we can create for ourselves. Yeah, and I mean, as I said before, I'm not going to say much more because I kind of already said what I was going to say about the sense of community. It's just sort of this fostering like little ecosystems that can sort of feed it themselves, and also I don't want to use the word infiltrate because that sounds like illegal or not quite couth, but that they can kind of grow and cross fertilize. Maybe that's a better way of saying it, for sure. So I want to get back to you, Shannon, because I think you have a specific way of looking at the people in your community, and you have different types of community members. Is that how how to understand it, or take it away?
Yeah. Thank you. So I think one of the big maybe misconceptions many people have about their email community is that it's made up of potential clients, which is the case. Like, that is the case. But if we drew a bullseye with 4 rings, what we would see is that category out of the 4 categories sitting on our email list is actually the smallest category, and it's potential clients, right? And so if I can get everyone to just think for a moment, if your email community also has collaborators, connectors, and cheerleaders, as well as the potential clients, how else might those other 3 groups need to be hearing from you? All right. And I'm going to define those just for a moment, because when I kind of finally cracked this for myself and really started thinking about my email community as not just potential clients, but there are collaborators, right? All 3 of you are collaborators. We collaborate on different things together. You're all on the email list, right? Or we talk in some way. That is one potential group of people sitting in your email community that needs a very different message and needs to hear something very different, and they're interested in something different than buy my thing or whatever that is, right? The second group is the connectors, and those are the people who connect you to other people and resources, equally valuable, but they need to hear a different message or a different ask, such as, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and I'm looking to be connected to this. Who do you know, right? Very clear messaging is the name of the game, always in all your communications. But the connectors have such an important role, and they get their joy from connecting you to the people that you're looking, or the resources that you're looking for. Yeah. Then we've got the cheerleaders, and I used to call these people the lurkers, and I was like super negative about them until I had this aha moment. And the moment was, these are the people who are never going to buy. You hardly ever hear from them anywhere, but they are reading everything, and they are sending your emails on, and they are telling the good word about your business, about your service, about your brand. They have an invaluable role in your email community. And so when we think about this bullseye and we really realize most of the email communication is aimed toward the client, I wonder what might happen if we got more holistic view about it and we actually had email communications for each of the 4 types of people sitting on the email list to grow the business. And that's really where my passion and my joy comes in, is developing those types of strategies for people.
That sounds really fascinating. I mean, we all know those types, and we know who they are on our lists. But to speak to them and give them sort of their, do you tag them differently and send them different content, or you just rotate through your content to make sure everybody gets something of everything at some point?
Yeah, I think it would depend on what people are trying to achieve. A really good way to do it is develop a quick survey, but Notice I didn't say a vague survey. I said a quick survey where people can click an option and that option tags them. And then you have specific lists you can talk to about specific things.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Very interesting. I love that. I love that. That's certainly something I'm going to think about for sure. Because I haven't really divided up my email list yet because, I always felt it was too small, but I guess no list is too small to not be divvied up. So I want to talk a little bit about community building because I know a lot of people who want to build communities or have talked about building communities but haven't. What are sort of the joys and pitfalls, or where do you all see? I mean, Jason, you have a monthly group call with over 60 people in it every single month, which I find mind blowing, right? In this world where we all have 50,000 things where we could be other than in your gem calls. And I know, Sophie, you run several groups as well. And Shannon, you have a massive following on LinkedIn, on Facebook, right? And I have my small but very dedicated community with my leg. I just want to sort of talk a little bit about, what we've learned in building a community and maintaining one, right? Because both are two different things, and both are not without their merits and their, hard work, so to speak. Jason, do you want to talk a little bit about GEM and how you see building those and maintaining those community?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, it does take some time and effort, but as entrepreneurs, I think one of the smartest things we can do is to find those high leverage activities that we can focus on and do what I call stacking the ROI, where there's lots of different payoffs that are potentially coming out of that activity. And so speaking of, for instance, giving these consistent opportunities where people can come together and connect with others around, and it's associated with me and my brand and my co-founder who brought this together, but, they're the real value that they're bringing to the call because they're there to meet each other. And not only does it's a part of my customer journey and funnel, like I identify people that might be clients through that without even being salesy on the calls, but also it helps me build and maintain my own network. It gets me more referrals because people are constantly referring others into that group. So like people are being introduced to me and my brand before the moment of even, oh, you need that service, go talk to Jason. It's happening even much earlier in that journey. I get opportunities to test content out. So there's lots of different things that come out of that effort. So that's one thing I'd point out about the effort is that it pays off in a lot of different ways. And therefore community building is high leverage.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think, have you ever tried build a community with a paywall, or have you always been in the free community world, so to speak?
Well, yeah, I always try to have some kind of sense of community related to my paid products and programs as well, so that people who are, my clients are always connecting with each other or on the calls that we have together. So, I don't know that people are joining specifically for the community, but in that sense, some paid, there is that, community even behind the paywall as well.
Yep. Very important. Very important. Yeah. What about you, Sophie?
Yeah, so I have two types of communities, sort of at both ends of the spectrum of paywall or no paywall, right? So I have a few communities of about 50 people each that really are very that's free, and it's really very loose in terms of what happens there. It's really about our content and sharing our content and commenting on each other's and sort of supporting with meaningful comments that can continue the conversation. And so, like I said, there's a lot of conversation there. I also recently launched a free co-working community. So yours, Jason, you talked about GEM is networking. This one is really just co-working. So when you think about it, it's not that much in terms of content, but I answer questions during the break, whatever. But the thing is, it's really aimed at my particular kinds of people. And so when I launched it, like 60 or 70 people signed up within 2 weeks. I haven't even promoted it or shared it or anything like that, because it's like you said, Nina, these communities need to stay small, at least for me as well. So, but we consistently have 10, 15 people show up, and it's just lovely. We just have this interaction. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I have very, very, very small communities that are behind an expensive paywall. So, it's a group program, but you can also call it a community because it's really very, very supportive, with a lot of support, of course, coming from me, but also from each other. And so there's really a very strong sense of community in that very, very small 5 people group.
Yeah, like the cohorts, or stuff like that, which I found to be, I used to run cohorts, and I found them to be incredibly valuable beyond what they were learning, just because community suffering is just different than suffering alone or with a coach. So, I mean, I find that on the more practical level, I was really surprised how easy it was to start a little community, right? Paywall or no paywall, but then to sort of gain that critical mass that you need, and make sure that where is the magic between charging, not charging, and the value you're giving, where you also don't have attrition, right? Or don't have massive attrition. Because to me, the biggest thing, I think, or the biggest problem with the community is attrition. And I've noticed with my community, I mean, other than one person who outright just didn't like the community, and I'm like, well, then you just were not a good match. I have had no attrition in over a year, but for 2 people who got sick and had to stop doing business things, So, and even those people didn't quit; they asked for a freeze. So, it's like, okay, so there's somewhere is sort of that magic between pricing, offer, and you still running a valid or a viable business, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating point of conversation, this attrition conversation. And it is like, for those of us who love community, of course, we don't want attrition, paid or not paid, because it's usually reflective that either it wasn't a good fit. So to me, that's a messaging and marketing problem on getting the right people there. Or something I do want to highlight, and I'd love to have this discussion around with the 4 of us today and our audience, is how many communities can you actually belong to and do it well?
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that I've been really mindful of in our email marketing and mentorship community, which is a year-long program, paid program, it is a community. But from a marketing and a strategist perspective, it was really important to me that I had a duration on there that was not people coming in, month out, month in, month out. That, to me, I would rather have less members that are more engaged and in it for the long term than 47 a month here, leave, come back. Like, that's never been the business model that I've wanted. And so I'd really love to talk about this, and just through each of your lens, I think it's a beautiful question, is should we be doing a better job vetting people who want in community and asking them, how many communities do you actually already belong to, and are you participating? Because there's a difference between joining and a difference between committing and becoming part of the community.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up. I started, and I really didn't want to do this, but after a year, Robin and I, my business partner and I, decided that we're going to give it a try, which is allowing people to do a monthly trial. Because for that exact reason, I didn't want that popping in and out. I felt I wanted to really protect my people who, have been with us now for over a year, have been very, very dedicated, and have put in, their share of also work to make this a community and recommend us to their friends. But what I really learned is, if the community is right and the people who are doing the monthly trial are right, I have so far had every single person who did the monthly trial also then go into the actual community long term, with the exception of a person I have right now. and that person has not even managed to fill in the form or be onboarded. And, I was talking to Robin about, following up and this, that, and the other. And at some point I was like, you know what? I'm not going to follow up because this person is not going to stay. They're obviously overwhelmed. They obviously don't have their shit together enough. If they cannot fill out a 2-minute form, they cannot probably be posting regularly and comment and be part of the community and do the monthly calls and the quarterly planning sessions. I might be wrong, but I think I've been around the block enough to know that I'm not wrong. So I'm not going to follow up because I don't think this person is going to be happy in our community, and she's going to waste her money, right? So I think being very I have a list of people who are no's that I don't want in my community, not because they're not nice people, but because I think they're not going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of why I don't have the barely or no attrition to speak of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you, Sophie? How do you?
It's a tough nut to crack, that balance between the price that you charge. So you have to charge something a lot of times for people to really be committed. I mean, there's that question, right? Do you balance between that, the content, like you want to provide content, you want to provide, when I say content, like activity or value, obviously for the community, but for it to not be too much. Like some communities, the one we belong to with Tiffany, is a call every week. Now, is that not enough? Is it too much? A call a month, like figuring out the price to activity level and fit is a very tough nut to crack. I don't think I've found a perfect solution. I don't know if any of us have.
And I think it changes, right? I mean, the one thing that we all know is that in our business, the one constant that we do deal with is the change, right? And I think that's a good point too. Is like, what are you offering? Like a call a week is a lot. And that was also in the beginning when I think all three of us ladies are actually part of Tiffany's group. But I also find that with her, the way she set it up, it's a choice, right? You don't have to be on those calls to get or not get what you're getting, right? There's other levels of what you can get. And I think that is sort of important to sort of serve all the different kind of learners or the different kind of types of people in the community. So there's people who do really well with the written content. There's people who do really well with the video/audio content. There's people who want that weekly call. They love having that on their calendar. It's the highlight of getting together with the girls or the group or whatever. And then there's the people who just love the fact that there is a community that can text, that there's a software that you can use to build community through personal texts or group texts. So I think a lot of people, everybody works differently or ticks differently. So sort of having different levels of engagement to help different learners and types, I think, is very important too.
Yeah, and I think there's also, let's be honest, there's different goals, right? So there are communities that we have to provide value to the people in them, usually would be paying communities. And sometimes we also can start a community, which is, very nice, but the goal is to have people in there who could potentially become clients, right? So that's also part of the equation.
Yeah. Jason, any thoughts to add there?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of attrition and cohesion, So one thing that's really important that I'm also hearing some themes of here is knowing what the ethos is of your community and making sure that people know that as they come in, because it's both a filter as well as glue that holds people together. So it's like, what do we stand for? What do we stand against? What what kind of value are we here to offer to each other? What kind of value can you get by coming and being a part and contributing to this community? And if that's made clear up front, then that can do a lot to bring the right people in, filter the wrong ones out, and hold together those that you do attract. So be clear about that as you go in, or discover it along with your community and define it with them as you get going. Right.
Very true. And I think also that, it sort of rises and falls also with how you are as a leader. Shannon, you were going to say something earlier?
Yeah, I like this discussion as a curriculum designer around meeting the needs of individual people. I think it's a worthy discussion that we could have a whole nother, LinkedIn roundtable on. But I would agree that, besides the basic, when I was a teacher and a professor at Brooklyn College, besides the basic, like, are you an audio learner, a visual learner, kinesthetic learner, which are really important, I think some of the other questions that could possibly be explored later is how accessible is your community for people who are blind, for people who are deaf, colorblind, like those types of things. And as our brand has grown over the last several years, we are getting people who are making our community more accessible because they want to join it, but we don't know all the things to know about. Oh, you have color blindness? No wonder these things you can't really see in our workbooks or in our guides, right? Or, oh yeah, maybe we just learned that PDFs aren't readable for a blind person who has joined our community. And so we're working to translate those into a way that is more accessible, which also, by the way, is why we quit using Word documents and went to PDFs, because people were stealing the content and making it their own, right? So there's always this kind of like learning curve and balance that I think we could talk about, of how accessible are the communities and how are we meeting the needs of the learners and the people and their style of learning.
Yeah, for sure.
You're listening and adapting. That's a huge takeaway that I hear from that. You're listening and adapting.
Yeah.
That's a really big one. Now, we were talking about how many communities, or Shannon mentioned, how many communities can we be part of and be effective and actually be good, good members of. I'm curious. I've been in and out of a couple of communities lately, where there were some pet peeves and my list, as I get older, my list is, longer than a foot at this point. Let's put it that way. And I have pretty big feet. So is there anything that you would, to the audience, and please, audience, if you have any pet peeves that you have or questions, please hit us up. This is meant to be a discussion, not just between the four of us, but the community as well. Are there a couple of things that you have noticed other people do that are on your pet peeve list, where you want to be like, don't do that when you run a community, or that could potentially get people really riled up? Is there anything that comes to mind?
A lack of leadership. Like if you start a community, you got to be willing to be a leader who, I mean, speaking of ethos or guidelines and those things, like you have to, facilitate those things, enforce those things, make that. And so, sometimes it's going to come up where somebody is, being too promotional in the community, or somebody says something that, isn't, conducive to the values or whatever. Right. And like being willing to, in whatever respectful, kind way, say something to, just so stepping up and being the leader, then saying the things that need to be said or doing the things you need to do that protect the community that you have grown. And I've seen things go really awry when, it's just kind of like, oh, we'll just let the community kind of sort it out. And like, either you're not paying attention or you're not willing to like step up and be the leader in those moments that are important. So that's one that comes to mind.
So maybe setting boundaries is part of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you are like that boundary setter and sometimes facilitator. I don't want to say enforcer, but for the community. And if the community doesn't see you saying something or doing something, then you seem like you're checked out and not as invested. So then they might not be as invested, or they might be less likely to want to give their time, because they're like, hey, when I come here, I don't know, if I'm going to get blasted by somebody's, self-promotion, or by, hate speech that doesn't fit our values, or whatever the case may be.
And I'm loving this, because now we're getting the pet peeves. Obviously got the people put the fingers to the keyboard. Yay. Actually now stuff is coming in faster than I can scroll.
Yes.
And Thea, I hope I pronounced your name correct. One of my pet peeves is when the community leader doesn't take any interest in my expertise, background, capability to help the community. I love that. I love that so much. We have a monthly call in our leg, and I always love when I can call. There's so much expertise with those 30 plus people we have right now. And I love taking advantage of getting feedback in a conversation we're having about, how to grow ourselves on LinkedIn, because in the end, I'm not the the end all and be all of the conversation about what to do and not to do on LinkedIn. So I love that. I love that very much. That's a great observation. And then Corey Huff says, I was recently in a community where someone wasn't violating the community rules, but they were posting constantly and oversharing, and the leaders weren't setting boundaries. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think so. I don't know about you guys. And I think it depends on what kind of community you're running. I have a little, a form that people need to fill in before I even onboard them. So it is a stepping stone you have to go through. Otherwise you're not being onboarded. And it clearly states what is kosher or what is expected and accepted and whatnot. And then sometimes there's some friendly little DMs, that, on LinkedIn. That's like, you know, maybe not.
I want to talk about I think this is really important to the question, but it goes with what I would call is a proper onboarding sequence through your email for the people joining your community,
Yeah.
right? And I'm talking like you're taking, and this is where Jason and I know we could geek out a million times on this customer journey. And like, if you're bringing someone into a community, what can they expect? What are the boundaries? What are the expectations? What are the guidelines? What is to do, yours to do? What is not yours to do, right? And I know this sounds sometimes heavy, but I think the reason people have problems in communities is because they haven't, one, given that any thought, or it's all living here and their members don't know what the expectations are, right? And so just as if we have like this ethos or this manifesto or this like guidelines, one of the things that I wanted to bring up is our communities are constantly evolving. They really are, right? And so I have an email marketing mentorship community. I have an email community. It grows every week. Each one grows every week. It is evolving. It is growing. It is not static. And so one of the things I have to think about as a leader is if person A gets dropped into one of these containers of community, how in the hell are they going to know what's going on? One, not just with the tech or with where we're meeting or what the expectations are, but we have a language in our community, right? Yeah. We talk about the content personality wheel. We talk about the 4 types of the audience that I spoke about at the top of the hour. And so we have provided, as part of the onboard sequence, a start here video, a picture dictionary or a glossary of the common terms that you will hear in the community. And I think if more people could think about this in terms of how do I make the newest person feel the most welcome because they're being dropped into an existing container, the communities would function a lot better overall.
I would agree 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And to add to that, Shannon, I mean, yes, the onboarding, but then there's also the reminding of, the current members. And that's one thing that I've, sort of not really thought of much, but I see that, so there's onboarding, I have a little page that everybody goes to, and so they know what to expect. But then, there's what you might call slippage, right? And it's not really in my nature to go and, say, hey, don't do this, do that. And so I was just getting a little bothered by a few slippage incidents. And finally, in my community, I made a, post and said, well, let's, as nicely as I could, to avoid these slippage things. And I was just surprised at how grateful my community was. They all were posting, yeah, this is great. We all agree. Let's follow this. And, so it's encouraging to take more of that leadership role, even though it's a free community. And so, but still.
I think a well-run group is so valuable, as you said, and as Jason has said, all of us have said. And you know, I like with my LinkedIn group, you know, we have posting rules, but we all have full-time jobs, and probably more than full-time jobs very often. And there are certain things that I let slip, but I'm very open about what I let slip and what
Yeah.
I do not let slip. And there is
Exactly.
absolutely no pardon for certain things, and my group knows what those are. And to the point where I actually get, because I can't always be everywhere and look at every single, you know, post
Mm.
and how many people have commented on you or haven't. But I encourage my group to let me know in you know, without, you know, blasting people, if there's members who are like, you know, breaking those hard and fast rules. And
Mhm.
I think, you know, as with everything in life, I think we need those boundaries so we can be as expressive and free as we want to be within those boundaries, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
yeah, and that's why I have that form, and a good onboarding sequence is really really important. I also want to just quickly get to Kirsten Peters' comment, which I think we have sort of mentioned, but just want to shout it out. That, you know, one of her pet peeves is people trying to use the community just for promoting themselves without bringing anything additional to the table, and I would totally agree on that. And sometimes it's very sneakily packaged as, you know, advice, but we all know who those people are and what they do and how they do it, and yeah, very often not welcome in those groups. Yeah. Go, Shannon. You are
You're
mute.
muted.
Sorry. I want to talk about a comment. It's not showing up here, but I see it over on the LinkedIn page, which is from Greg Walters. And he said, speaking of email and LinkedIn communities, won't LinkedIn take the place of an email list? I could go on for hours about this. The answer is no. They serve two very different functions. And if you're in business to generate revenue, you will prioritize getting your LinkedIn people over to your email list who want to hear from you, so that if LinkedIn disappears, your business does not go poof. As we have seen people's LinkedIn profiles disappear, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever it's called, wherever they're at, I get these people in tears monthly. And they are saying, I spent so much time growing my audience on this platform and my account disappeared. I was banned. And what I need everyone to realize here, and this is just the one soapbox I'm going to get on that my roundtable peers will allow me to do. You do not own any contacts unless you have an email list where you are collecting them. And if your business disappears, if your community on social disappears, I do not want you to have to come to me and say, I'm starting from zero again and my revenue has tanked, because it is happening month after month after month, and we are seeing it. And as bots are now the thing that is reviewing content and making these decisions, it's even more important that we are prioritizing what I think is the smartest business asset, which is the email list.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everything has its place within, you know, our funnels or in our how we set up our businesses. And as someone who has had their profile banned, it is effing nerve-wracking. It happened many years ago and was my own fault. I used a plugin that I didn't do my homework and didn't know was verboten. What I also didn't know is that I had to remove it from my actual browser as a plugin for LinkedIn to reset the clock to another 72 hours and then give me my profile back. That was a really ugly week. So yes, and yes again. Get your clients and the people you want to really talk to and have be your community off the platform. Very, very, very true. Very true that. Okay, so the pet peeves, we talked about that. I love that we kind of got we got a couple of people engaging on that question. I want to add one that is really, really doesn't seem to be that big a deal, and it's the hugest deal ever. I was a part of a group that had a very fresh person run the group, young person. That person showed up for every single call with a different excuse, a good 5 to 10 minutes late. and it just shows the lack of interest, of leadership, of getting your shit together in general. And it irked me to the point that I no longer participate in that group, although the idea of the group in itself was actually really brilliant and for a while helpful. But to not be present to the needs or to the container that you have created.
Mhm.
And that's why I appreciate, groups that are run really, really well, where if you have monthly calls or you have group calls or you have any kind of content happening, where you just see the person leading it is well prepared, is invested, and is caring for the group that they have under their wing, be it 5 people or be it 30 people or be it 5,000 people, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And I think that is, to me, the single most important thing that will attract me to a group more than who am I going to make business connections there or what am I going to learn. I want to know for the time, even if it's not even my money, or especially if I'm paying, I want to know I'm being taken seriously and I'm not just a cash cow or a vanity metric that signed up for something. And now that the work is done, that this person has signed up.
Mhm.
Yes, it is a lot of work to get people into your communities, the kind of people that you want, but the real work starts then. So don't go lazy and lackadaisical. No go.
Yeah, it's a relationship, and this is all of this is about relationships. And so, if
Mhm.
you don't consider your members, and as people you have an ongoing relationship with, and facilitate them having an ongoing relationship with their community peers,
Yeah.
then you have no business having a community.
Very much agreed, and I think our audience is too. So
Mhm.
thank you, and Thea, Anne, and Mandy for your feedback on that. Yeah, and I think that's where you leave, right? Because I mean, sometimes there's some value that you get when the leader does show up, but it's also a group that you're not going to stay with or that you're
Mhm.
going to. I mean, I'm not going to recommend a group where I know just a little thing like I know the person who runs the calls is going to be 5 minutes late every single time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and the power of community is not just who we recruit, but who our community members recruit. I mean,
Yeah.
I joined Tiffany's group. I'd never even spoken to Tiffany, but you guys were raving about it, so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let me join. Right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to
Yeah.
always remember that our community members are our best, sales team.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just Mandy, who has been
Mhm.
participating, has brought a couple of people into my leg, and I have a couple of. I mean, I have quite a few members that have been brought in by their friends who are
Mhm.
members, and that is a real thanks, Anne. That is a real sign of I know I'm giving the
Mhm.
right value at the right price to the right people, right? So,
Mhm.
and I also know that it's never set in stone. It's always changing, and we we try to really take well care of our people. Um, so we've talked about setting boundaries. Um, let's talk a little bit just about safety, or I mean, it goes hand in hand, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about um, showing up as leader. Yes, monitoring the group, making sure that there's boundaries, making sure that there's rules, making sure that people know in what kind of container they are and what is expected and not expected of them. Um, but also, I think for a lot of business, small business owners, solopreneurs, as we are, um, there's also these communities also are a place to maybe be able to vent a little bit or to sort of find a home, right? Another home. And because I mean I've been in business for 30 years. The first 25 years I was just you know flailing around by myself, and I had maybe once a month a lunch with another production company owner, and that was it. I mean, I never had a community until not the Zoom thing happened, and Meetup happened, and all that internet stuff happened. So, um, any insights there, Jason? You want to take that?
additional insights about safety in the group?
Yeah, well, safety, maybe safety is not the right word, but like a harbor, or yeah, safe haven, something like
Safe
something to
space.
that. Yeah, safe space. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that goes, yeah, along with like knowing what the ethos and the values of your group are and who you're, and protecting not only the ethos, but protecting people's time. If there's some like you mentioned, like if the person's always showing up 5 minutes late to a facilitated call or whatever, right? And so, one key aspect of my community is the monthly networking meetings, and they're 90 minutes long, and we know that people are, like you said, like they have other things they could be doing, right? And so, we try to really respect their time in terms of the value that they're getting, in terms of how we run things, and starting on time if we can, and making things clear and easy to be able to attend the meetings. I mean, these are all little things where if all these little bits of friction are what add up to, like, and it might not even be a totally conscious decision on someone's part. They just stop coming. They just stop prioritizing it. And then over time, they slip out of your community. So that's one thing that comes to mind. It's just like, protecting people's time and, what they're investing to be a part of your group.
Yeah, we really have to think of, sorry, I'll go. We have to think of their experience, and there's some communities, for example, talk about pet peeves, where I'm always having to look for the Zoom link, right? So it's in the reminder, or it's in the invitation, or maybe it's not in either, and just these little things, exactly like you said, Jason, where people will drop off. But I wanted to talk also about safety and how we need to remember every time we start a meeting to talk about this is a safe space and have people commit to that. And then when somebody does behave, in a way that's not quite within the rules and the safe space, then, as you said, Jason, just exercise your leadership and, lead by example.
Yeah. Yeah. We have some comments on this actually too, but Chen, you were going to say something as
Sorry,
well.
Shannon,
Yeah, no, it's good. I think psychological safety for members, the leaders, I mean, it goes both ways, is really important. I'm going to give a really practical example. My spouse transitioned 5 years ago to a woman, and by nature of that, and her being part of my community and me talking about this when I could, we attracted a way more diverse audience over these last 5 years. Like, I can look back now and I can say, wow, once I got over the, oh shit, what's happening, and could think through things clearly, which y'all, it was a thing, right? I realized the queer community now saw me as an ally and a safe space. And that, to me, I love that. But it also meant, as a leader, I have to be responsible to keep it safe. And so in my Facebook group, for example, which is, where I've primarily been until this last year, there was a very small comment that was made on a post. And the comment was something like, I do not believe there are any other, I believe there are two sexes and there's nothing that can be changed about it when it happens. And so I realized, okay, well, I'm on a spotlight now. People are going to see how I'm going to respond to this. And so I tried to do the very kind and compassionate thing and say, well, actually, I actually used to think this way too, but then I had this happen. And she just was adamant that no, there was no middle ground and you could never change. And I took it in that moment. I removed her from the community. It was no longer a safe space psychologically. But here's what I did that people didn't see, and I didn't feel the need to talk about it. I didn't shame her. I didn't make her wrong. I said, I'm sorry, you're not a fit for this community. I did it in a private conversation. I didn't go talk about it somewhere else. I didn't bring it up in community. What I said next time we met, as you all may have seen, there was somebody that just wasn't a good fit for this community. I want you to know you're safe here. And I think it's important. I think psychological safety is important. And that goes too for, I mean, we don't even have time to talk about it, but when do we not feel safe as a leader of a community because we are being harassed? We are being like constantly challenged. And there's a line there, I think. And it's an interesting conversation.
It sure is. And I think, there's also the safety, and I see this also in the comments coming up. Safety to make mistakes, the safety to learn, the safety to figure things out. And I think that is the beauty of a community, and that is and should be a safe place where, you can come in and you can, maybe, in our case, your first couple of posts are a little weird and, not following, the perfect rules of a perfect LinkedIn post. But it's all a trial and error thing, right? And then getting compassionate feedback or suggestions rather than you should be blah, blah, blah. I think that is so important so people can feel free to grow and to find their voices, right? Because for a lot of us, my community tends to be a mirror my age. So, boomer, Gen X cusp. We don't all feel very comfortable putting ourselves out there necessarily. So being able to do that in a safe space and being able to experiment in a safe space, I think is hugely, hugely important. And, I was also just laughing at myself because my pet peeve was showing up late for a call. And what did I do today?
Things happen. Usually
it happens, but I'm talking about, consistency. Consistency is a good thing if it's on the good side of things, right? Consistency on the bad side of things is another thing. This has been such a fantastic conversation. It is the top of the hour, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So we're going to stop it here. Those of you who watch the replay or are still in the chat right now, if you still have questions, bring them on. We're going to monitor the comments. And since we have loved doing this so much, we have already scheduled our next LinkedIn Roundtable. It is November something or other, a Tuesday, November the 12th, November 12th. Also on a Tuesday, also at noon. We don't have a title and a topic for it yet. Wednesday. So we would love to hear actually from you. Would love to do this crowdsourced. So while you're at it and while you are, all fired up and hot, give us topics that you want us to discuss. Anyway, thank you all so much for your time and for your expertise and for a great conversation. And we will see you all in November.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.